In 2010, an accident occurred on the Deepwater Horizon oil platform, resulting in the deaths of 11 workers and 4.9 million barrels of oil and 275,000 tons of natural gas spilled into the Gulf of Mexico over 86 days. The spill contaminated the open ocean, deep water areas, and more than 1,200 miles of the Gulf's coastline. This event is considered the largest environmental disaster in U.S. history. When they managed to put out the platform fire, people started dealing with the aftermath of the accident. About half of the oil was removed from the bay using standard physical and chemical methods, but some of the oil just disappeared. This is weird. Really weird. But anyway, a cup of coffee, and let's try to figure it all out. Just a reminder to not forget to hit the like button if you usually do that. Recently, in 2021, scientists conducted some very interesting research in the experimental zone of lakes in Western Ontario. The researchers set up barriers along the shore of one of these lakes and dumped regular raw oil into the water to simulate a spill. After 72 hours, the scientists cleaned the enclosed area as best as they could and then began to observe what would happen with the remaining oil. These were long observations that continued throughout the summer and winter, but it was worth it. The team found that after the oil spill, the composition of bacteria in the soil and water changed drastically. Rare types of bacteria, which were almost never seen before, suddenly became the most common. And most of them turned out to be capable of breaking down oil, using it as a food source. It's like nature itself adjusted to the pollution situation and tried to fix it. Just to fast forward a bit, so it turns out we'll need to feed them in these areas with the same oil. Otherwise, what's the point? Although they could be bred somewhere else and then quickly brought in during a disaster. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Can this happen not in a small lake, but in a huge bay? Yes, these microbes are present there too. Moreover, it's thought that the ecosystem in the Gulf of Mexico might have been prepared for a large-scale spill during the accident because oil's been seeping in small amounts during drilling. Not in such volumes, of course, but it seems to be like with immunity to snake venom. You get it through small doses. Scientists confirmed down in the Gulf of Mexico there's a native population of microbes that have adapted to oil due to the high volume of shipping and daily spills. It's no wonder that many people tend to think the microbial community in the Gulf of Mexico, with its thousands of natural oil seeps, is especially well adapted to dealing with oil. There are indeed experts who dispute this claim. According to them, the ability to clean up oil spills is present in ecosystems all around the planet. Nature is ready to deal with the spills. Moreover, it's already doing it. Right now, too. Every year, 1.3 million tons of oil gets into the environment, mostly through natural seepage. And the only reason why our beaches aren't covered in tar balls all year round is because of the huge number of microorganisms that can break down the released oil. They're in every ocean, from Antarctica to the Arctic. It might sound strange, but there are so many natural oil seepages all over the world that we literally owe it to all these microorganisms that we even have oceans. In their normal state, there aren't many of these bacteria, and they just chill. They live their peaceful bacterial life in the ocean, but only until crude oil shows up in the water, and at that moment it doesn't matter if it leaked out naturally or if it's from an oil tanker spill. At this point, the few bacteria sense the hydrocarbons in the water and move toward the source. There they thrive and multiply, and the bacteria numbers increase. Well, you get how it works. But since we more or less understand how these bacteria work, can we use them to our advantage? Because during anthropogenic oil spills, like the situation in the Gulf of Mexico, there might just be way too much oil. It can overwhelm the natural microbial community, spread, end up on the shore, and then we're facing ecological problems of all kinds and magnitude. Basically, if the affected area is big, nature can't manage it alone. But you can assist. And there are two ways to do it right away. The first one is known as seeding, that is, artificially introducing the needed bacteria into a contaminated area. In laboratory conditions, this method worked really well, but field tests encountered some problems. The results, let's say, turned out to be inconclusive, and in a few cases, no benefits were observed at all. Also, as I mentioned, during oil spills, the bacteria population increases on its own, so adding more bacteria to the water probably won't help much. But there's also the second approach, fertilizing the natural flora. By adding nitrogen and phosphorus, scientists were able to stimulate the growth of bacteria and increase the rate of oil removal. This turned out to be a more successful solution. Though oil removal still takes days, weeks, and even months, bacteria generally don't work quickly. And it seems like you can't make them do it, or scientists haven't found a way to do that yet. Well, actually, the fact that bacteria can't quickly break down oil isn't so bad. If there were microorganisms that could destroy oil in days or even hours, there wouldn't be any roads in the world. These microorganisms would simply eat up the asphalt and resin in it right after it was laid. And you should also keep in mind that oil consists of many components, and there isn't a single microorganism that can break down all of them. That means breaking down oil is a team effort of a whole community of different bacteria. And only together can they deal with the pollution. Sounds like a moral lesson from some cartoon. Well, we need to help each other, and together we'll handle the oil spill. By the way, that's exactly what happened in the Gulf of Mexico. At one point, it was decided that the last and only defense against the ongoing oil spill from Deepwater Horizon was tiny microbes munching on hydrocarbons. And since you couldn't convince them to act faster, people came up with another option. Over 800,000 gallons of chemical dispersants were used on the oil spill to break the oil into smaller droplets that bacteria can more easily eat. It's like cutting a treat into pieces so your cat will definitely eat it. But microbes aren't cats. I mean, they can't literally eat oil. I read several scientific articles and they were very serious. Let's make it simpler. First of all, hydrocarbons are a natural and primary molecular component of crude oil. That is, crude oil consists mostly of them, always. And second, microbes break down hydrocarbons while metabolizing them for growth and survival. This process is complex, pretty strange, with a bunch of clever chemical tricks that have amazed scientists. But the fact remains, microbes take oil and feed on it to survive. And if you add microbes, enzymes to oil-contaminated soil, they start feeding on it. And then they only leave non-toxic carbon dioxide and water. Cool, right? What can we as humans do to handle the spills? So far, only 15 to 25% of the oil can be effectively removed by mechanical means. This was true for large oil disasters like the Exxon Valdez spill in Prince William Sound, Alaska, and Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico. During the last accident, a lot of methods were used to handle the spill. The rescuers collected the oil from the surface of the water, burned it, and also used chemical dispersants to break it into small droplets. I've already mentioned these. The thing is, they usually start the cleanup after an oil spill with these chemicals. Then the smaller droplets that come from the bigger ones end up in lower waters getting mixed into a larger amount of water. But the trouble is, these chemicals can be extremely toxic to marine life, including those very microbes that can break down the oil. So right now, scientists are trying to find chemicals that wouldn't harm microbes but actually help them. But that's a whole separate area of complex research, so let's not get into that. Because, besides the chemistry I already mentioned, they use barriers. They physically stop the spread of oil. Well, or at least try to do that. And if you dig a bit deeper into methods for dealing with oil spills, it becomes clear that bacteria are actually the best option. Way cooler and more effective than any existing methods. See for yourself. Cleaning up oil from industrial sites, burst pipelines, and old oil tanks can be incredibly complex. If oil has spilled into the ground, you can remove it. But that just moves the problem somewhere else. Contaminated soil won't evaporate on its own. As for the chemicals, it's all clear with them. They can also leave behind other toxic residues that might be a lot worse than oil. Especially when mixed with broken down oil, this kind of cocktail is downright fatal for corals. As for the barriers, rough sea, strong wind, and the barrier will break, and along with it, all efforts to contain the oil spill. Overall, the methods currently used for cleaning up spills in rivers and lakes aren't particularly effective. They only collect a certain amount of oil, and everything else stays in the water, poisoning it. Bacteria, on the other hand, are a different story. But you need to be very careful here, too. Not only because people, by actively interfering with natural processes, often ruining everything. Imagine this. Scientists find a way to grow bacteria and use them to consume oil spills. It sounds pretty cool. But even now, there are concerns that some microbes might potentially start multiplying near oil refineries, and they could reproduce so rapidly that oil companies might get upset. The bacteria could end up clogging their pipes. And hardly anyone can judge bacteria. Why wait for your food delivery when you can just move right into the restaurant? Basically, you need the correct amount of microbes that clean the surroundings so they don't start polluting it. Who really knows what these bacteria can do? But what if I told you that there are animals that live in symbiosis with these bacteria of ours? Not long ago, scientists from Germany and the USA discovered them. Deep in the Gulf of Mexico, oil and tar seep from the ocean floor and form bizarre structures that look like cooled lava, asphalt volcanoes. And because of them, down there on the ocean floor, a whole ecosystem of mussels, crabs, worms, sponges, and many other animals thrives, which doesn't care at all that they interact with oil. There's only one catch. These creatures can't feed on oil or tar, and other food sources are pretty rare at such a depth. That's about 9,800 feet, just to give you an idea. And this is where our microbes come into play. They live right inside these organisms, protected from competition with freely swimming microbes, and they break down oil into energy and carbon. This results in classic symbiotic relationships where both the microbes and their hosts benefit. Plus, this isn't a relationship that developed recently or by accident, like in response to pollution. No, the microbes inside the organisms are even genetically different from those living outside. You could say it was all planned that way by nature. In scientific circles, everything I talked about today is called bioremediation. It's the use of living organisms to break down pollutants in the environment. And it's not just bacteria that eat oil. There are actually a lot of different organisms that can be used. But let's talk about two. For example, if you throw special fungi from the Aspergillus genus into a flask full of motor oil, they'll grow. Along the way, the fungi will successfully break down the oil into food, converting it into non-toxic substances. These fungi, which include several hundred species and are found worldwide in various climates, can also be used to clean up oil spills. There are also worms that eat plastic. Here they are. Although, of course, it's not really about the worms, but about the bacteria that live inside them. In 2016, Japanese scientists discovered a bacterium on plastic waste dumps that can break down polyethylene terephthalate, the most common type of plastic. For example, it's used to make bottles. So Ideonella sicensis can eat a plastic bottle in less than 24 hours. Just compare that to over 450 years, which is usually needed for such plastic to decompose. Unfortunately, you can't just dump bacteria into the ocean to deal with floating plastic waste, but you can study them to make the waste recycling process healthier. In general, bioremediation methods are more eco-friendly compared to industrial technologies. It's all about how natural it is. Nature figured all this out by itself. Well, people just need to modify these fungi and microbes to make them useful. Artificial microbes. For decades, scientists have been working on genetic modifications that could boost the microbes' ability to break down oil spills. While we were preparing this video, I read a bunch of articles of different relevance. In a 2010 article, it was said that there were no artificial microbes more efficient than those found in nature, but a little over 10 years have passed and things have changed. In 2022, researchers developed bioproducts that can be used to clean up oil spills in the ocean. These bioproducts are precisely based on oil-eating microbes. They, just like the microbes, can break down hydrocarbons in the oil, making it easier to remove from the environment. The lab at the Faculty of Natural Sciences at Bangkok University is already producing 3 different products: a liquid with microbes for soil, granules with microbes for sand, and a separate water purification solution. Cool, right? History at risk. As it usually happens, everything has a side effect. Microbes that once thrived around sunken ships in the Gulf of Mexico changed significantly after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010. These changes in microorganisms living on historically significant vessels and nearby may damage both the ships and marine life. There are plenty of sunken ships at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. There are more than 2,000 known, some of which are over 500 years old. All these wrecks can and do serve as artificial reefs, supporting deep-sea ecosystems. Then a spill happened, and part of the oil settled on the bottom along with microbes, in much greater numbers than usual. When there suddenly are more of certain organisms, it has a big impact on the ecosystem, in this case, even the microbial one. And you can only guess what'll happen next. For instance, the degradation of steel hulls and sunken ships might speed up, leading to the loss of some of our shared human history. Not quite the effect you expect from an oil spill. Sun versus oil. According to recent research, people had another unexpected ally in cleaning up the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico: the sun. Scientists believe that sunlight might have played an important role in breaking down the oil that wasn't collected. The process of photodissolution could have removed between 3 and 17% of the oil floating on the surface of the Gulf of Mexico. It simply disappeared before humans or microbes could reach it. So, according to scientists, this kind of dissolution happened with the help of the sun. When oil absorbs sunlight, it transforms into compounds that then dissolve into the seawater. Well, you owe me a like. See you later.